Hello and welcome to episode 32 of Match It and the Other Guy. And Kevin and I, as ever, are sitting outside my home on the banks of Lake Wylie in pretty good weather in North Carolina. Kevin, what do you think of the weather today?
I think it's better than expected. I think they were predicting some precipitation this afternoon, but it's come off pretty nice.
Yeah.
A little bit breezy.
We had down here last night, we were just talking about this before we hit record, the most colossal storm over the lake, which woke me up about 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning, just like the world was coming to an end for an hour with thunder and lightning and very heavy rain. But all gone away now, and it's a beautiful spring-like day, no humidity, which for me in Charlotte is a wonderful treat.
This is good porch sitting.
Right, and the wildlife on the lake is surprisingly quiet. This morning when I came out here and had coffee first thing in the morning, the geese were going crazy too. But everything is very calm and sedate at the moment.
Well, we got two of them not 20 yards from us grazing on your lawn right now. Two of the Canadian geese.
Having a picnic down there, but not a single word coming from them.
I think they're busy.
Yeah, and for those listeners who are worried about our two nesting geese that we had down on the point, which we mentioned a couple of episodes ago, and we said we'd keep you updated on progress. Well, sadly, there is no progress. Mama Goose made a nest, and there's a lot of feathers all pulled together as a nest, and she didn't really move from there for about 3 weeks. But then, all of a sudden, I don't know what happened, Mum and Dad just got up and left, and that was the end of that. But I went down just to inspect, and there's the remains of the nest, but no eggs or even broken eggs, so I have no explanation for that.
I don't either.
No.
The circle of life somehow did what it needed to do there and moved on, I guess.
That's right. Well, talking about the circle of life, and this episode, the circle of life on this podcast is that I never know the subject that we're going to be talking about. You do, Kevin. So, start us off. What are we going to be talking about?
Well, I had something fairly recently that sparked the idea for this,
Oh, yeah.
and we'll get into that as we go. But what the topic, I'm going to call it pleasant surprises. Something in your life where, not like a birthday surprise, not that, it's my birthday, oh, they surprised me with a great party. I'm going to kind of further that, something that you either looked at going, oh, I really dread going to do something, or I'm not looking forward to this, and it turns out to be one of the best experiences you ever had, or something that you just were like, I just don't really want to bother, and then it turns out to be wonderful.
Yes,
so something along those, the complete opposite of what you expect.
Yes, like you kind of wish you were not going to event A, B, or C, but when you come away from it, you think, wow, that was fantastic.
Exactly.
Start us off. It sounds like you've had an experience and you want to share it with us, so do.
Well, I've got a few examples, and I'll give the first one that kind of really makes me think about this. I go back to kindergarten, and back in Knoxville, Tennessee, in the little outbuilding we had out at the school, West Hills Elementary, for any of my old classmates that may be listening. And I was in that sometime that year, and we got a new student come in, and his name was Darren. And for whatever reason, I just remember not liking him. And I don't know why that first day. I just don't know why.
You just took against him.
And again, it's so many years have gone by, but I do remember that he ended up becoming like my first best friend. We really hit it off and just, played at recess together, and, occasionally would stay at each other's house and stuff like that. And so, but that, again, I had no reason not to like him, but I just was in my head that I didn't, and he ends up being my best friend. So that's a good example to start us off.
These things are inexplicable, how they happen or how these events happen, but you're absolutely right. I remember now you've started us on this topic. Two things from my childhood that always have stayed with me, and events that exactly like you described. I was thinking, I don't want to go here. This was one event was at the Manor House where I grew up as a kid, and my dad and his friend, it was getting twilight one summer evening, and my dad was chatting away and having a cup of tea with his friend, and his friend said we should walk down through the fields and see whether or not we can see the badgers at twilight. And I was thinking, I really like the idea of wandering off into the woods at twilight. I mean, I wasn't in any way scared. I thought, well, you know, whether it was a Star Trek night or something, I think I'd rather stay right here.
And going messing around with notoriously grumpy little critters, too.
So, anyway, Dad said, come along, Stephen. You could, if ever called me Stephen, I know I had to go and do it. There wasn't really a choice. Come along, Stephen. We're going to look at the badgers with Ron Tivy, my dad's friend. Okay, so we set off down through the fields, and we got closer and closer to where we believed, or my dad believed, that the badger set was. And he said, lie down in the grass right here, lie down there, just at the edge of the woodland where the fence is. Okay, so I'm lying down, get down there when we're looking through the twilight, and then, well, sure enough, out of this badger set in the ground, Mama Badger pokes her nose and starts snuffling the air, and then comes out, and then two badgers come out, and then the little badgers come out. So I would say summer, but maybe it was more like springtime, you know. These little badgers were not very old, but I just remember it being something quite magical. You know, wow, seeing these woodland creatures. And you talk about badgers not being friendly, and most certainly that is the case in most countries. But for reasons I cannot explain, even the badgers in England are quite fun and friendly.
Really?
Yeah, they're not as nowhere as nasty a reputation the English badgers have as the badgers in the rest of the world. You don't want to get anywhere near them, and if you got too close to them, they would become grumpy. But on the whole, they'll just turn around and run away if they encounter the smell of humans.
Uh-huh.
So we were watching these badgers as the sun was going down. I don't know, for maybe about half an hour, and then we went back home, and I just remember it being a delightful memory, and I remember it to this day. You just described, hey, let's talk about things that you didn't think were going to be fun, but that still sticks with me, being an amazing thing, yeah.
Well, I mean, we're going to jump off topic a little bit here again, but, you know, I don't think about badgers very often, but are they very prominent in England then? Because weren't they written in, they're one of the characters in The Wind in the Willows?
Yes, I mean,
I never really think about where they're located in the world.
Yeah, right.
That much.
Children's authors have always talked about badgers as being very friendly, and typically you tend to see, you know, illustrations of badgers. They're usually wearing waistcoats and pocket watches and very well smartly dressed, and they're always portrayed as being intelligent and thoughtful. And I guess, you know, that's kind of the image I've always had of a badger, but. They have been, I'm not sure if they're protected now, or they certainly went through a stage of being somewhat endangered because of hunting, and dogs would be sent after badgers. But I don't think actually in reality they used to do an awful lot of damage, unlike a fox, which the fox would cause havoc in livestock. I don't think badgers were anywhere near as destructive. But of course they used to dig sets into the ground, and maybe that was the problem for farmers. But yeah, I'm pleased that I saw those badgers, and you know, great memory from being a kid. Yeah.
Good.
The other one which sticks in my mind, I should say, again from childhood, and again concerned my dad's friend, Ron Tivy. I always remember Ron Tivy as being a great friend to my dad. And the other thing, I'm getting slightly off topic now, but the other thing I remember about Ron Tivy, he was in Monza during the Second World War. He was with the Allied troops moving through Monza as the Germans were retreating out of Italy, and he has these harrowing stories of being a soldier with the Allied army, with the British Army, moving from Sicily up through Italy, through Monza, and up into the mountains at the north of Italy. When I started racing, and the first time I went to Monza was in 1990 with Benetton. But I have written about it actually. I always remember those stories of Ron Tivy describing the artillery barrage around Monza, and he used to describe seeing the great flashes of light and hearing the boom, boom, boom as the shells were hitting Monza, clearing the German troops away from there. That's another story of Ron Tivy, but this one was another fun countryside story where he wanted my dad to come and help him do some baling on some land that he had, turn grass into straw, and they had a baling machine, and they would bale it, and Ron had a little sort of small holding with horses, and he would use the hay for feeding the horses. And again, I thought, oh, I don't really, this is a long drive, but my dad said, "Come along, Stephen, we're going to help Ron do his baling." And I thought, oh, okay, all right, here we go. And it was just the most fun experience of being on this trailer, being pulled by a tractor, and the old baling machine behind. And Ron's son was driving the tractor, so it was my dad, Ron, and me were standing on the back of the trailer, and Ron Tivvy's son was driving the tractor round this field as we were doing the baling. I think actually at this point the baling had been completed, and what we were doing with the trailer was picking the hay bales up and putting them on the trailer to take them back to the farm. And I remember that Ron Tivvy's son would pull away in the tractor with a great jolt, and we'd all sort of have to hang on to something quickly as the trailer started to move. And I remember Ron Tivvy shouting down to his son, "Don't just pull away with a tractor, because we may fall over. Say something before we leave, before you set off." And this thing has always stuck in my mind, because Ron Tivvy's son would shout back, "Hold ya!" And every time he said, "Hold ya!" the tractor would move forward and off we'd go. And that stuck with me forever. Yeah, I just remember that, coming back from a great fun day out.
Now, how old were you?
Oh, I'd be, if I was 10, that's all it was,
right.
But yeah, that stuck with me.
You felt like you got a full days of manly work.
Yeah, it was exactly that. It was exactly that. It was like, oh, here I am with the adults, playing adult games. But it was a lot of fun. I didn't think it was going to be, but it was a lot of fun.
Very good, very good.
Yeah.
Well, another example I have is actually, I didn't really think about this, but it kind of bookends my first one. My first one was in kindergarten. The next one is my senior year in high school.
Okay.
So we're getting ready for the semester, and you look at who you've got assigned for what classes, and I look at my sheet, and and again, people that went to high school with me are going to go, oh, okay. But I got Mrs. Clendenin for British literature, and I was like, oh no. I'm like, oh, how am I going to make it through this, year? I think it was a year. I only think it was just a semester. But
yes, was this the teacher that was giving you the fear, or the possibility of having to read British literature?
Probably both.
Okay.
But we started off with Beowulf.
Oh, okay.
As you would, as it really is the beginning of all literature.
Sure.
So we started, but I tell you, we worked our butts off in that class, but we felt so rewarded doing it. It was hard work, but we loved doing it, and she was a great teacher, and the way she handled it was really rewarding.
Yes.
We just went through, we did Beowulf. At one point, we obviously touched on Shakespeare, because we ended up watching the Zeffirelli Romeo and Juliet movie.
Yeah.
So we watched that. I remember we did some kind of report, and two, I remember this vividly. You're always kind of scared about speaking in front of people, but we had to do a couple of reports to the class during that class, whether it be a year or whatever. And I just remember being as comfortable as could be, getting up there and being very animated and speaking about whatever topic I had been assigned. Yes. And it was just very comfortable,
And were you comfortable because you were on top of the subject, or was it that she instilled confidence in you?
I think both,
way?
And maybe it's just the people that were in the class. We kind of just from that earliest weeks of the doing it, that we kind of just felt as a team that we're working together, to help everyone get the most out of this class. And she kept kind of promising this, and this kind of goes back. You have to remember the '80s to remember it. But do you remember the show Moonlighting with Bruce Willis?
I do.
And Sybil Shepherd. Well, they had done a whole episode based on the Taming of the Shrew.
Okay.
And so she kind of, as a reward, promised us that we'll watch the and that was just fluff, just an hour, the whole class period of just watching a funny episode of a show, and that was kind of a reward for something we had accomplished during the year.
Yes.
So that's I look back as being one of my greatest classes of all high school.
That's tremendous. Again, we're already beginning to shift off topic in a way, but when you have a mentor or a teacher that somehow forms this bond with students and can convey information or passion or insight or whatever it is, like, be excited by this because of this reason. Wow, that makes such a difference to the learning experience, doesn't it?
It's a rare thing.
It really is a rare thing.
To have a connection like that.
Yes, it really is a rare thing. I am very far from an expert on Shakespeare, but every time I tend to watch Shakespeare more than I read it. I've got a good number of Shakespeare's plays around, but I just remember that first exposure to Hamlet, and just the way, talking about a master of writing, but just the way that Shakespeare uses language, not merely Shakespearean English, but the connotations and the thoughts and the insight that is in his scripts, just phenomenal. And I remember that thing with Hamlet, that the classic is to be and not to be, and I didn't really understand what it was at the time. Then it was describing whether or not does he want to continue living or should he commit suicide, and what is happening around him and all that stress. It's just, wow, this is just fantastic stuff. Yeah. I don't remember actually when I was at school, and again we've talked about comprehensive education in England not being the stellar education that it perhaps should have been, could have been. I don't think we ever did study Shakespeare to any great degree. We may have touched on it slightly, but not really. But this idea that you describe of standing up in front of a class with confidence, I must say, again, from my childhood in England looking over the Atlantic towards the United States, that is one thing that always stuck in my mind was when I would see shows about you guys being at school and it was show and tell or whatever it would be, and you're standing up in front of a class and describing whatever it is. I remember thinking at the time, wow, you guys over in the States, you've got such incredible confidence to stand up and do this. Of course, and over in England, we never had anything like that in our education. We're all utterly timid and terrified to get up in front of a class because you know that your friends, for want of a better word, your friends would ridicule you for the rest of the day if you ever stood up and started to talk about something in front of the class.
Yeah. Oh, I'd forgot. Well, I mean, obviously, I remember now doing it, but I'd kind of forgotten about doing show and tell. But we did it in grade school, and literally, yeah, you'd get up and come up in front of the class. And I always look back. It's funny how I look back at those now and go, all the great things my dad had that I could have brought in and really shown something interesting. Instead, the teacher, I remember being warned. She said, if you bring Star Wars cards again for show and tell, because I must have tried like 3 times, and that didn't go over well. And my dad had all this great historical stuff, that I could have brought in or whatever, or showed, whatever, but,
So,
live and learn.
Educate me here then, Kevin. So how did that work? Was it once a week or once a month, or was it completely random? And were you given a sort of topic of talk about, I don't know, we talked about farms earlier on, farming implements this week, or would it be anything at all? Or
being over 40 years separated, it's kind of hard to remember, but let's say once a week sounds maybe right.
Yeah, okay.
I usually don't recall it being a theme. You just kind of bring in something to,
yes,
that everybody might be interested in or something they hadn't seen before. I do remember there was one project where each person in the classroom, and this was probably kindergarten, so Darren and I were probably in there together, and we were each to bring something that began with the letter of the alphabet. And I can't remember what I brought, but the person that got M brought a motorcycle, an Evel Knievel motorcycle.
Oh, cool.
And I thought how cool that was.
Yeah.
I was like, I like that.
Okay. Oh, I'm with you. So if there was 26 students in the class, for example, it would be A, B, C, D. You've hit the
And
letter.
that was just the one time in kindergarten,
Okay.
I remember. Most of the time it was just we're having show and tell, bring something interesting. And, again, somebody might bring a medal that their dad had gotten in the service, or they might bring a little cast bell from their grandfather's farm or something. That's the kind of stuff you're supposed to bring, and you're not supposed to bring, Star Wars stuff.
I think that is a tremendous subject to do, a tremendous boost to confidence to have to stand up and talk in front of a class. Because as we know, confidence is such a crucial part of life. To feel, not to be overconfident, but to feel the confidence of being able to get up and discuss something, debate something, ask relevant questions, and not just sit quiet at the back of the class and miss all the opportunities around you. I think confidence is a great thing. And I do remember, thinking, even as a kid, 10, 11, 12, boy, I wish we did more of that sort of stuff to boost confidence. Yeah. The one, so you mentioned Star Wars earlier on, which made me giggle, because I was thinking the one time I do remember standing up, having to stand up and talk about something, was Planet of the Apes. And I was, it was my choice of topic. And I was I was all over the Planet of the Apes movies at the times in the early to mid 70s, and I had to describe why Planet of the Apes was my fun topic. What was the appeal of it? And of course, being a kid, I was kind of struggling to understand the concept of, okay, what I want to get over to the class is this wonderful shift in time that happened during the Planet of the Apes movies, whereby when the first astronauts arrived into the future, into the Planet of the Apes, and couldn't understand what had happened to Earth and the mystery of why the planet was dominated by the apes, and humans were now being treated as slaves. And at the end of the first film, we saw Statue of Liberty in the sand, which then, of course, was the great giveaway. Oh my goodness, this is Earth, we're on
Yes.
Earth, what has happened? And then it was the second film after that, and the third film, where Escape from the Planet of the Apes, where two apes went back in time to the 1970s before the Planet of the Apes and produced offspring. And it was their intelligent offspring which led to the revolution of the apes, which became the Planet of the Apes. Okay, so it was this wonderful circle of time, and I was thinking, wow, I kind of just got my mind around this, and how do I explain it to the class? And I was confused at how to do it. And before I stood up, I was saying to one of my friends, who's also called Stephen with a PH, Stephen, can you ask me this question about how the circle of time worked in the Planet of the Apes? And of course, I don't think Stephen was quite as enamoured with the whole subject as I was, and he couldn't really give me the keys that I was looking for. Of course, now you'd phrase it in a different way and just tell the story, but yes, I do remember that. I do remember talking about Planet of the Apes getting up in front of the class. But I think any opportunity to gain confidence in front of a crowd is a good thing.
Yeah, we're working on that with our daughter, who's just recently turned 8. And
Right.
We're trying to instill that, and she'll do like performances at the house. Show us
Yeah.
a routine, or she'll sing for us or something like that. We're trying to boost that. But she does gymnastics. She does that in front of people, and she does really well. So.
It's a great thing. I think it's a vital component of young life, and I wish it was. Perhaps things have changed out of all recognition now in England, but it was certainly something that was lacking back then, in comparison to what you guys are doing in the States.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you remember any other experiences back on topic that you thought, oh, I don't want to do this, but it turned out?
Well,
to be terrific?
this is a prime one. I've stuck with this one for a long time, and it was mid '90s, so it was about probably '95, and I was working, and the office I was working in worked in an advertising department of a corporation, and I think I was just walking by, and somebody had won tickets to a concert that night, and they couldn't go. And
Okay.
they kind of popped up out of their cube and said, "Hey, I've got these tickets tonight. Does anybody want them?" And I'm passing by. Well, I love concerts anyway, so I had to say, "Sure." Before what are they? Because I'm jumping right on it. Well, it was Christopher Cross was opening, and then the main band was America. Are you familiar with America?
I know of them. Yeah, I know.
That's
of them.
how I was at that point.
Okay, yeah.
And I knew Christopher Cross because he sang "Sailing" and the Arthur theme from the movie Arthur, the Dudley Moore movie.
Yeah.
And so I knew I liked Christopher Cross, and I was like, well, I don't really know that much about America. They do "Horse with No Name,"
Okay.
So I knew that.
Yeah.
Well, so I had these 2 tickets. So this is before cell phones or any of that kind of thing. So I just got on the corporate phone and called my roommate and said, "Hey, I just got these 2 tickets tonight. You want to go?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'll go." So we both kind of figured, well, we'll go. We know Christopher Cross and stuff. We'll listen to Christopher Cross and maybe 1 or 2 America songs, and then we'll probably just leave. Well, it was a little outdoor amphitheater. It used to be where the World's Fair site was, because the World's Fair was in Knoxville in '82.
All right.
So they've always kept this little outdoor amphitheater there. It has nice little seating and stuff, and just it's kind of a small venue. Well, we got in there and had decent seats and stuff from those tickets, and Christopher Cross put on a nice show, and we enjoyed him. And then America came on, and all of a sudden we were just like, after 2 or 3 songs, we're like, oh, I didn't know they did this song, and I didn't know they did this song. And I tell you, by the time they got to the end, and it was like time for the encore, when they did the Sister Golden Hair, which was another one of their big hits, we were all dancing in the aisles. It was so good.
Fantastic.
And I will never forget that, because again, I expected, Christopher Cross will be good. I really don't know that much about America, and we'll probably end up leaving. And it ended up, it wasn't a week went by before I went and bought their greatest hits on CD
What a
that,
great-
that
what a
weekend
great
and drove around,
experience.
with
Yeah.
them playing.
Yeah.
And I still love them. And it took until, maybe 4 or 5 years ago to finally get to see them again. It just never happened that they were in the
Right.
same, ever toured in the same spot. Fortunately, when I did see them a few years ago, it was a little small show down in Rock Hill, South Carolina, where we live here. And afterwards, I kind of caught them walking out backstage to their bus that was going to take them to their hotel. And it's mainly two guys. And I got to tell them that story. And they thought it was very interesting. And it's
Yeah.
taken me this long to see you guys again.
But this is the reason why.
Yeah. So that's always been and I've been to tons and tons of concerts, as you know, and they've been, many of them, great for many reasons. But that one is great because it was just a complete, total surprise of how good it actually was.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
I remember, I'm going to tell you now, I don't think I've ever shared this story with anybody. As this is cropped up as our topic, thinking about events which I didn't want to happen or turned out not in a good way, but actually the end result was completely different. I was on summer vacation, summer holiday, with my girlfriend at the time, back in the 1980s, mid-1980s, and we were on a little Greek island called Antiparos, which is a tiny little island very, very close to or adjacent to the island of Paros, P-A-R-O-S. And one day, my girlfriend said to me, let's hire some scooters and explore the island on scooters, which was a very common thing to do, probably still is. And I said to her, I don't want to do that personally, because my brother was killed on a motorcycle. He had a motorcycle accident, and that put me off two-wheel transport altogether. And I said, I don't want to do that, but I don't want to stop you doing whatever you wish to do, of course. And she said, I'd like to do this. And I said, okay, look, we'll go our separate ways today. You go and explore the island on a scooter, and I'll just explore the island on foot, and we'll meet back at the hotel, and then we'll have dinner. So we went our separate ways. And I'm strolling off around this island, and back in the 1980s, I don't suppose it's any different now. These islands are very, very basic, and there was very little in the way of luxury or marked trail paths. That's where I'm going with this. And I was walking around the island, climbing over some of the rocks down near the sea, and then climbing up the cliffs, if you like, around the island. And I started to climb further and further up, and the cliff face started to get steeper and steeper. And the more I started to climb up this cliff face away from the rocks and the sea below, the more unstable the land was. It became very shale, and I was really struggling for handholds and footholds. And I said to myself, like, I can't go back. Right, I've got into a position now. I've got to go forward.
Yeah.
And I started to lose confidence. Talking about confidence, and I'm thinking, boy, you've been really stupid here, because there's nobody around to help you. There's literally no one here. There's a very clear and present danger you're going to fall onto these rocks in the sea below, and the only way is to go up. And the more I started to climb, the more and more shale I started to encounter, and I started to slip, and then my foot would grab a little tuft of grass and stop me falling. And I just remember sort of clinging with both arms, hands and feet onto this fairly, I wouldn't say it was steep, but it wasn't absolutely vertical, obviously. It was a steep cliff face. And looking up over the cliff face, and I saw one of those very typical, they're all over Greek islands, those little Greek chapels, white dome top with a cross on the top. This is not a religious story, but I just remember seeing that church there, that little chapel there, and I remember being on the side of the cliff and thinking, boy, you've been so stupid. Why have you done this? Why have you done this? I remember a young guy, like, you've got years ahead of you. You've just thrown your life away. I didn't really know what to do. And I just remember thinking, just find the confidence and the faith in whatever there is to get up this cliff face, and it'll be okay. And very slowly, I just remember moving further and further up this cliff. and moving closer to the chapel and got to the top of the cliff, and I was okay. And I just remember sitting with my back against this chapel and looking out over the ocean thinking, I have no explanation for that, but I thought it was over. I mean, I genuinely thought it was over. But for whatever reason, I got to the top. We've talked about, religion many times, and the fact I occasionally do go on spiritual retreats, and I'm interested in all religions, but I don't consider myself particularly religious. But I do remember that wasn't a religious experience, but I remember getting to the top thinking, there's no way I should have got out of that. I don't think I've ever shared that story with anybody.
Well,
before.
amazing.
Yeah. Well, that's 30 minutes. That went pretty fast.
Yeah,
Didn't it?
yeah.
We better call it a day.
I think that's a good way to end it.
Well, that's right. That's right. But
I don't think we'll be able to top it.
yes, it was a curious day. Great fun talking about it. Again, we have no idea. I have no idea what we're going to be talking about, but these odd memories that come back out of childhood when we start talking is quite amazing, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, and this one, I told you something kind of spurred the memory is in my vehicle, I've got kind of what is like the jukebox where I could download a bunch of music, and my daughter was poking around. She's learned how to use it because we're in the line for school. She's allowed to get in the front, because she can be unbelted and stuff. Well, she gets to poking around, and she pulled up America and started playing an America song this past week, and that's what made me think of the whole story. So
yeah, that worked out very well. All right, gentle listener, I hope you enjoyed that. If you're ever on holiday on the small Greek islands, do take great care when you're walking around the cliffs, or enjoy a concert if you get to go to a concert. Take care, and we'll be back with another episode of Matching the Other Guy. Bye for now.
We'll see you then.
Yeah.
Bye.